You're listening to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast.
This makes my nipples hard.
Hey there, friends. Thanks for joining us. I'm here with Paul, and we are
Oh my God, thanks, you guys. I'm sorry.
We're doing another in the comparison series, which is super exciting because we've had so many people, which is funny because people do say this and they're like, hey, we really like the episodes in the comparison series. So we have long and hard thought about the shortest possible game that we could play because I'm on vacation right now, wherever it is that Paul says I am. And we haven't had a lot of time to put together an episode. So we have chosen the game Loom by LucasArts, which is a musical game of bobbins and rusty nails.
Bobbin Threadwood. Bobbin Threepbare.
Bobbin Threepwood. Bobbin Three Weavers. Okay, and here's the thing. This game is near and dear to my heart. Technically it's not, but I've discovered today, after much thinking, that potentially it should be, because my grandfather's ex-wife, Catherine, is a weaver, and she would harvest the wool from the sheep. And when we'd go to visit her, she had all these looms set up all around her house. And she taught me how to make the spool of wool and thread it through and make rugs and other things when I was growing up. And Paul, my other church friends had a harp in the room, and I'd play the harp all the time. And when I was a kid, I used to always equate music to weaving.
Man, well, first of all, you knew that you were starting to lose me because you used my name to bring me back in. You're like, Paul, fucking check out on me. And then you followed that up with your church friends. I'm like, dude, I'm trying here, but you went from cloth making to church friends, and I more than anything, I appreciate the Sierra like moon logic that you've brought into this episode with LucasArts by being like, this should be close to my heart, even though it's not. Here's why it should be. That's awesome.
Well, because the other side of this, going back to origin stories quickly, not that we were there before, but in past episodes, when my dad brought this game home, he said, here's a game, it's by LucasArts, and you play music to do stuff instead of typing or your traditional point and click with a menu. You're probably not going to like it. And I said, thanks, Dad. Thanks, but no thanks. Looks like a stupid game. I think I spent 5 minutes on it, and I never touched it until recently in the last few years, when I've restarted it a few times and not finished it up until we decided to do this episode, when I gave it a full playthrough.
Yeah, the conditioning was strong there. It's taken you 40 years to step out of your dad's shadow and try to enjoy this game.
Yeah, well, and it's because it's a game that has different skill levels too, right? Because you can be like, I don't know shit. It'll name the notes. Or in the hardest skill level, you have to listen to them and you have to remember what you've heard and then re-represent them and be able to transcribe them into your book of spells or a book of music and things like that, right?
I first of all, I always play on the I don't know shit level. It's my personal favorite level, just for anything in life, in games. Just I start off on the I don't know shit level. Yeah, it's
not standard. You start on practice.
Exactly. Wait, well, all right, maybe not practice, because then that sounds like mundane repetition. You know, like just seeing the word practice as an option. I'm like, ugh. I mean, I got to make some sort of headway. I don't want to.
So standard is where you went. Yeah, exactly. I played standard on my playthrough as well.
And then you're referring to the bloody spell, Bobbin's book of threadbearing.
Yes, that's the one. I've never had a physical copy of the game, and any copies that I've played have not been off of like a CD or like downloaded from a site that would provide me with that kind of information. So instead, I've always had a little notepad where I just write all the spells that I learn on it.
Dang, I meant to check on GOG before we recorded if the download comes with at least a PDF of it, because I got to say, okay, so
I do own that one. I just didn't play it because of the version. by the way, actually.
The thing with
So,
okay, this is a book of patterns. So I was stuttering earlier trying to find it in my notes in time.
Thank you.
I didn't, but yeah, the book of patterns is amazing, and there's some like Sierra like elements to this game that really probably shouldn't be attributed to Sierra as far as credit's concerned. Maybe even more so Infocom, but I'm going to give it to Sierra anyway. But there's just some really cool backstory lore. Like I don't know, I don't think so much of LucasArts games as coming with books full of information and background lore, like King's Quest, as we just covered, gives you like this whole amazing like romanticized backstory on the Isles. Speaking of King's Quest 6, and I don't know, I attribute that more to a Sierra thing, whereas Loom picks up in that tradition and comes with this book of patterns that talks about all the different drafts that you can weave, and has blank notation so you can write the drafts down, because there is a random element to the game, right? Where there's more or less about 3 different versions of each draft.
3 or 4 depending on the
Yeah, it'll change on gameplay and stuff like that. And it's funny because I do have the book of patterns in the box, but I wouldn't dare write in it, like after all these years. So I kept them in like a little phone note, and that was a
So
mistake.
you have it.
I do, but I almost regret. I came to this conclusion messaging you on my little pedal bike this morning that I wished 2 things. I played this with my son last night, as we've been doing it, and I chose to play the FM Towns version. And we'll pick the bones of the versions in a minute. But I chose that version because usually with him, it's better him being 9 years old, it's better to go with the talkie version, because the characters bring a certain amount of life to it, and it can get frankly exhausting, like trying to champion the excitement for him by reading it. It's like you want to keep them hooked, so you try and make the voices really good, and then by like 30 minutes in, I got nothing, and everybody has the same voice. It sounds suspiciously like me, just regular ass Paul. But but I regret. First of all, I regret playing the remake with him. I should have played the original with him, and we'll get into why later. And I regret not just using my damn book of patterns, because there's something. First of all, I didn't get to kind of like give him some of the backstory that we would have gotten from the book of patterns, or even I really should have listened to the audio drama with him as well. One of the two. But anyway, I missed out on this like authentic experience by not writing the drafts down like in a book as we go along. Like there was just something really artificial about like quickly writing them down in my phone notes. Like it felt more like in the way. Like oh, I gotta write down this fucking draft again. Like, and I really fucked up the whole gameplay with him. We're cursing a lot. I'm sorry. But I feel like I missed an opportunity gameplay wise with him last night to have like a more just authentic, relaxed, enjoyable experience. And yeah, we got a little too let's just finish this about it, which is especially hypocritical of me. Considering I keep telling everybody, especially like beta testers and my brother recently who played it, like playing my game, where it's like, hey man, it's the journey, not the destination, man. And like I just totally threw all that aside and was like, let's finish Loom. I have to record tomorrow. We kind of messed up our gameplay, but anyway, let's do. I'm going to do the Anna question for you. Let's do. Well, you kind of did cover your backstory a little bit. Okay, so my backstory real quick then is we bloody had this game growing up. My dad really liked it. We definitely played it together. I don't remember listening to the audio drama growing up. Speaking of that, it's a little cassette that comes with the game. And man, it is
adorable.
It is like a potentially important to this story, the audio drama, because and maybe even to the game's detriment in a sense, because I feel like with the Sierra games, God, I hate doing this like comparison thing because it always makes it sound like I'm like passive aggressively shitting on LucasArts, which I'm not trying to do. But I will say that this game, you can be a little confusing at very first. Like there's a lot of what the hell is going on in the first like act, let's say, of this game. And the game does answer most questions like in a self-contained way by the end of the game. But first of all, it doesn't answer all of them. And second of all, if you listen to the audio drama first, you're a lot more invested. Like exactly what's going on. Yeah, exactly. Like, okay, here I'll give it to the listeners very quickly. The backstory is that the children of the Weavers are all dying, and let me I'm going to step back one more step and say that something I didn't gather when I played this game, when I replayed this game for the first time, like 6 or 7 years ago, was I struggled a little bit with like the actual connection to like the Loom itself, and there's just so much lore. Like Ryan Moriarty has Corey and Laurie Cole levels worth of lore that they could just like Tolkien amounts of lore. that's packed into this game, and that can be a little overwhelming. And I really did struggle on my replay to completely grasp like exactly what is going on with the loom and the weaving and stuff like that. And then I found a neat little way to put it, which is the magic, the connection to the loom is the fabric of reality. So the weavers they're weaving within and influencing the fabric of reality. And just hearing
Which
that
that makes the ending scene make so much more sense, Paul. Shit.
dude, I'm glad to hear
What?
you have that moment though, where it's like, oh
Mhm.
right, okay, because it's
Mhm.
so blatant, but it's not. It's not blatant at all,
Mhm.
but it is. But once I had the word reality after fabric, I'm like, okay, that's what they're weaving. They're weaving the fabric of reality, and that's how they, that's why there's spells even. Because like before I had made that connection, you just find yourself wondering stuff like, where does spells even come into this? Why are we doing
Mhm.
magic now? I thought we were weavers, and so anyway to the listeners, and hopefully that's an epiphany for maybe one of you. And if anybody hasn't played it, you maybe even have a better experience going in knowing that it's the loom is the fabric of reality. So
Mhm.
it's a lot of me talking. So I'm just gonna do the backstory and then give the hand off to Anna. But the backstory, real quick, is that the children of the weavers are dying. Signa, who's a swan come to story, is a bereaved mother, and she asks the elders of their guild if see again you're dealing with a lot of lore talk. As soon as the word
Mhm.
guild comes into things, there's lore going on. um
Mhm.
but she asked the elders if she could use the loom to fix this, let's just say, because she's a
Mhm.
grief mother, to bring her child back, and she's told no. And in her grief she kind of inadvertently draws a child from the loom,
Mhm.
and that's excuse me, and that's Bobbin Threadbare.
Yeah.
Or Threep Threep
Threepbare.
Threadwood,
The
Jesus.
problem is like nobody likes him. Like he doesn't exactly get welcomed with open arms.
Well, and it's exactly, and thank you, because that actually ties into why I'm bothering with this backstory thing right now. Is because
Mhm.
from a gameplay perspective, it's like everything just happens kind of suddenly, and all of a sudden, what seems like your mother, Hetchel, who's not your mom, turns
Mhm.
into an egg, and then into
Mhm.
like a black swan or whatever, and
Right.
you get the sense that Bobbin is an outcast, but you don't really know why. And
Mhm.
so all this is covered in that audio drama, where it's like, hey, Hetchel's not your mom's. Signa is. She was a bereaved mother who lost her child, asked if she could have the loom try to bring him back. She was told no. She
Mhm.
inadvertently ended up uh, drawing Bobbin from the loom, like
Yeah.
through her grief. Because she did that, the elders charged her with treason and turned her into a swan.
Mhm.
And then they decided that Bobbin was to be raised outside of the Weavers Guild until he was 17. But
Right,
Hetchel,
but yes.
who you think is your mom, I think initially when you're playing, who isn't, but Hetchel, it teaches you in secret the drafts and the
I was
notes to
going to
play
say,
to influence the physical world. The end,
dude,
or the
it's
beginning.
true. All up in the secret though.
Yes, exactly.
But you're still learning. You're coming in, you're essentially coming in as like a student of the craft, and you know how, but you don't fully know enough yet. So you're like a super noob in the beginning.
Right, exactly. You're a super noob.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's, I guess what I'm trying to say is there's these elements of the audio drama and the expanded lore that
Mhm.
maybe some of it should have been put into the game that weren't. But again, this is a
Mhm.
different time. This was written in '88 and put out in 1990, and like this, it was more safe to assume that the average player would have listened to the drama first or read through the book first,
Mhm.
and gathered this information. I think it's less the game's fault and more just a consequence of time that this stuff has
Mhm.
fallen by the wayside, to the point where like the original LucasArts Adventure Archive, the floppy disk one, basically the compilations that included Loom never came with the cassette again.
Mhm.
And you can find it on the archive and stuff like that. But yeah, it's the game suffers a little bit without it.
It's the same. Starship Titanic has a book that goes with it, as well as audio cassettes, which I have all of to
Cool.
go with it. Just doing, and it was written by Terry Jones from Monty Python, and it's all tied in because he came into the project because Douglas Adams was like, nah. So you know how it happens. Sometimes you just feel that way. Yeah.
Okay, so we're thrown into it. Anna, you played you played the remake version last night. What was
Mhm.
your okay, no, not last night, last week. What was your initial thoughts of, because this past week or so was your first official time through the game, yeah?
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was very pretty and very simple. Like I can see what kind of turned me off about it when I was younger because there wasn't a lot of interaction, and you can kind of like what in every scene the hot spots. There's essentially going to be like 2 or 3 at the max, maybe what 5. There's not a lot. It's limited. The hardest part for me is I didn't have a book of drafts, so I was naming them whatever I named them, and I wasn't always like categorizing what everything was. It took me forever to figure out to do it backwards. I wanted to go in blind and then I missed some drafts and kind of got stuck. Like when I was in the Dragon's Cave, I couldn't empty the water out so that I could reveal the goose so that I could, and then there was that stuff with the orb that you mentioned, and then there's like the multiple clicking on things, but like, and then clicking on yourself, and it was all wild. Like it wasn't like, I know everybody says it's super easy and you can blast through it, but with no hints and with like straight up playing it, it's kind of a tricky game.
Right, I agree to that. I agree that it's often a lot of the analysis of this game is assuming that you've recorded all the drafts correctly, and again, the game suffers out in the context of time. Like it kind of
Mm-hmm.
suffers in 2024 because you don't have the book of patterns that
Mm-mm.
tells you all the names of the drafts, like the
Mm-mm.
the shrinkage spell, which draft, which you can reverse. By the way, I have a childish note in here that says that specifically. I know, boo, boo this note. But anyway, yeah, again, it kind of like it suffers a little bit for not having the backstory, and also you're kind of lost in the desert without the book of patterns because you're having to name the drafts yourself, and it's, I don't know, the way that they were obviously purposely named in the book of patterns in such a way that helps you recall what you need in the gameplay. So if like we give it our own names, it might not be like evident at the time, and you also bring up another good point that it isn't like, it's maybe technically there's no like walking dead end moments, but like if
Oh,
you
the
didn't
time
write this thing down,
consuming dead end. Like, why was, yeah, if I didn't write it down and you get stuck falling down a trap door and you end up in another section and you need spells or drafts that you got from way earlier in the game,
right, then in
then
that
it's
case
like, it's overwhelming.
but yeah, you're right. It is okay. So some of the, I guess some of the pros is like the story heavy factor. I like that it's you're able to focus a little bit more on the story aspects of it, but it does lack a little bit of, I guess you would say, interactivity.
Well, it's non-linear for sure, and yeah, it does lack a little bit of inner. Like, I was rereading the Sierra book recently, and I sent Paul. I think I sent it to you, anyways. That yeah, that was it. Every second rule, or every 7 second rule. That's, he called it the 7 second rule, and then he wants the player to click every seven
Ken,
seconds so that they don't fall asleep.
yes, Ken Williams.
Yeah, and LucasArts makes me fall asleep sometimes a little bit.
Right. So they had the 7 second. Ken Williams had a rule, the 7 second rule, which was he wanted interactivity every 7 seconds, and it is interesting in a sense that Anna and I both have a proclivity to get a little turned off by hotspot markers and things that are a little overtly handholdy. And I was talking, we were talking about this off air, but to share it with everybody, we were kind of surmising that perhaps the 7 second rule of engagement, while not to be taken like, that literally, let's say, but okay, I'll put it this way. If you highlight, there's only so many rooms in an adventure game that you could possibly draw or cohesively put into a story. And it's like, if there is hotspot markers, then the first time you're in the room, you're going to see everything the room has to offer. And then that room is used now. It's the nutrients have been taken from it. The
Yeah,
interest has been gleaned, and then you move to
nom
the
nom.
next room. And yeah, exactly. And then you move to the next room, and you suck it dry of all its hotspots and interest and nutrients. And then the rest of that level, or the rest of the time spent in that area, is just, get me through this room. I've already seen this room. I already know everything that's in it. There's nothing left to be uncovered or explored or anything like that.
Mhm.
And I really do see the value in something like trying to keep the clicking going, because it maintains my interest when I feel there's more to be gained from exploring that I
Mhm.
and it also does things like eases the rest of the gameplay, where it's like I don't find the need for a fast travel exit through a room because I don't know that I've seen everything in this room yet.
Mhm.
And maybe this time through I'll spot something I didn't quite notice last time. And it also
Mhm.
it leads to interesting mechanics in gameplay where things can appear in a room later because the developer can trust that you're still walking through the room and looking through it.
A
And
la King's Quest 6.
yeah, exactly. And I think it offers a lot. Whereas this is a decent example of a bit of lack of interactivity leads you to more want to just kind of get through the room. And I was struggling to keep my kids' attention with this game last night, as I kind of
Mhm.
was alluding to earlier with some regrets. But anyway, that is the bulk of the negative things that I have to say about the game, because
Mhm.
I do love this game a lot.
It's beautiful. Yeah, the whole Swan Lake and well, I call it's not what is it that it's like it's based on
It is, yeah, but based
yeah.
on a combination of like, primarily Swan Lake, and then I think with a side of Sleeping Beauty.
Which
Like,
is we have a Swan Lake by my house, and I always think I'm calling it the wrong thing because I think I'm talking about my local lake, but it's got
right.
a nature sanctuary and stuff, and it's called Swan Lake. So
The Swan Lake music hall in this game was an awesome choice. The
it sticks in your head for sure because it's already in your head, so it breeds familiarity in it. It was nice because they fought against it in the beginning, and then they're just like, no, we're going to do it.
right, exactly. Yeah, I like so many of the tie-ins were so well written, like as far as um, Signa or the guild being turned into swans, and then group of swans is of course a ballet. So you see the ballet of swans head off while Swan Lake is playing in the background, and there's just some cool profundity in that, I guess you could say. But
Hmm.
the game also did take a lot of influence from Sleeping Beauty, which is probably most evident in the design of Chaos, the main villain in this game. Just Chaos has a
Hmm.
Maleficent kind of vibe to it. But also, if you just look at like the woods, I feel like a lot of the nature scenes do have a Sleeping Beauty, like a whimsical Mother Nature kind of vibe to it. That's very cool. So,
Hmm.
all
Well,
right. Oh, go
there
ahead.
was a Japanese company put out a CD of Swan Lake that was inspired by the score for Loom. It featured a jazz quartet.
Oh, cool. Okay. Based off of Fat Man's music, I
Yeah,
imagine then,
based off
right?
of Fat Man Sanger's music, who we recently saw. I mean, I'm sure you saw it too on a Space Quest historian has had some videos with him featured in it, which are really cool to see.
Right. Yeah. So Fat Man did the VGA remakes music, and then of course, obviously, Seventh Guest and many other
Hmm.
things as well.
Yeah,
So,
lots.
okay. Well, let's start going through the game. The story of the game, and
Hmm.
we can just tackle our little notes and things we want to say as we go along, and I'll try and weave in some weave in. That was an accident. I'm sorry.
Ah, that was looming the whole episode.
Oh, jeez, Louise. All right,
You opened the freaking door, man.
I did not mean to. That's why I'm jeezing. That's why I'm jeezing here.
I always every time I played it, I was like, "What the hell's with this leaf?" You click on the leaf's there, it's not there. I can't do it. What the hell's with this leaf? Can you leave the leaf there? I don't know. It
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
it's meant to strike a feeling of existential crisis in your heart. Of all things must die, as the
Oh,
seasons will change. You know.
aw,
I don't know. That's
that's
as deep as
nice.
I could
Yeah.
possibly make it
Whoa.
sound. But I did fuck with my kid hard last night because he touched the leaf and it died, and I'm like,
Right.
"You killed the leaf. Like you Strummer killed that leaf, and now it's dead, and that's your fault, and you'll have to live with that." And he's
Hmm.
like, "Wow." And then from there on out, the next thing we do is like touch the clam, and that opens up the oyster clam guy, and then a bird eats it. I'm
Hmm.
like, "Great, my son is a bloodlust now. He killed the clam." Um, and there's just I forget I can't name them all now, but there's like
There's a bunch in this game. Bobbin's kind of like I get it. Like some stuff in the beginning, we'll talk in the later in the end comes back to make it better. But he's kind of like laying waste in his wake
yes.
as he roams through this valley, like
Laying
killing, maiming, ruining, stealing, and just like randomly causing shit everywhere he goes. He's no innocent little weaver.
Dude, and that's exactly it was. I mean, I'm saying fucking with my kid. was more a running joke with my child. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I don't know if I need to hold the audience's hand in that regard and be like, yeah, not a terrible dad. These are jokes, but it became a running joke because then he kills the leaf and then he kills the oyster and the clam thingy,
Mm-hmm.
and then then he makes lightning strike the tree, which kills the tree. And it was just like there was like 5 or 6 things in a row where the first 6 things he touched all led to them being destroyed or dying,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
so that was kind of funny to mess.
Oh, yeah, emptying bodies of water even. Look what I mean, initially when shit happens with the dragon, you're just like, "Whoa, brutal much."
Right,
What you have to do
right,
to him, you're just like, "Oh, okay." But we're
great,
not there yet.
great. Now all the gold is hay. Way to go, son! Like this is unbelievable. Just wildly irresponsible behaviors. Okay, so anyway,
Totally.
Act One, the discovery starts off with the leaf. Um,
Mhm.
which I feel really does have a bit of a symbolic kind of touch to it
Mhm.
because Brian Moriarty, who wrote this game, is an amazing writer. Like this game
Mhm.
is written incredibly well. It's
Mhm.
incredibly romantic writing.
It is.
Like as far as like romanticism is concerned, let's say as opposed to lovey dovey, man. Um, just there's a high feeling of romanticism and the cost of living and things like that. Like a lot of themes, I guess you could say, are addressed in this, which is very cool. It's very fun. Um,
Mhm.
so Bobbin is summoned by the elders to the sanctuary via a messenger nymph, and that marks the start of his journey. This little glowy guy is like, "Hey, follow me." Um,
Mhm.
and you're like, "Wait, I'm gonna touch this leaf first, and then I'll follow you." Um,
Mhm.
and so you head off down to the tents, and just immediately off the bat. Well, okay, I'll skip that. So you go into the elder's tent and you witness Hetchel's transformation. This is basically when they cast her, they put somewhat of a, let's say, curse on her that turns her into an egg. Uh,
Yeah, and remember, this has been Bobbin's caretaker, right? And is also extremely senior in the group. So being
yeah,
punished it's like this is a pretty big deal if you're going to think about this on the cinematic scale.
right, exactly. Thank you. And I think this scene. The whole story arc with Bobbin's mom and Hetchel, let's just say, because they get
Mhm.
confused, it really suffers in the remake because
Mhm.
the remake, the VGA remake, including I believe including the FM Towns version. I'm a little muddy to be honest on the
Yeah,
like.
it's true.
Apparently, the FM Towns version isn't lacking the material that the VGA is, but I felt like it was, and maybe that's
Mhm.
just me misperceiving it. But I'll just say that the mom story arc, the Signa Hetchel motherly figure story arc suffers in the remake because in part because of how laconic the egg scene is. Like they don't explain
Mhm.
enough at all in the remake version as to what's happening.
Mhm.
Like in the EGA version, when she's first turned into an egg, the elders didn't expect it to happen, even though they did
Mhm.
it, and they're just like, "How curious! What a curious destiny!" I think is what they say, something like that. And in the VGA remake, it's much more just like I don't know, just a matter of fact, like, well, she's an egg now. We're gonna fuck off out the window, and they do,
Well,
and
they miss entire conversation blocks for absolutely no reason other than what it's carelessness or something, but it's a little bit that talks about disgrace and what's kind of going on in the background.
right. They talk more about why they're turning her into an egg in the remake,
Mhm.
but you don't get the
Mhm. You're
why.
missing stuff.
Yeah, the fact that it turned out to be an egg. Like I'm sorry,
Mhm.
I misspoke. That you understand why they're punishing her or putting a curse on her, which they're I don't know. At the same time, they're confusingly blaming Bobbin and then punishing her for it because again, you don't know that in the audio story that they were going to cover the fact that Hetchel was teaching you in secret. But like you don't know that in the opening scene. It's just I don't like the
Mm-mm.
way the opening scene is handled in the remake at all. It's super
No.
confusing. And I watched a YouTuber called Scarfulu.
Okay. Yeah,
Scarfulu.
they do a lot of good stuff.
Right, yeah, it's not a ton of adventure game YouTubers, so most of our listeners probably know their channel, and it's very good. And I'm not sure how active it is these days. Yeah, they recently did a Monkey Island one, but anyway,
Mhm.
Scarfulu played only the remake, and had no real, like, he barely mentions that there's even versions. Like, he's just like, yeah, I'm just happy-go-lucky playing a game. Let's pull up Loom. Oh, I have GOG downloads the remake version, so that's what we're playing. And so there's this innocence in his approach, right? There isn't this like pedantic nerd behind his narration that's saying, well, now see, in this version they're missing this, and you get to just see from a pure perspective what it's like to play a VGA version in 2024. Or whatever, I think it was like 10 years ago. It doesn't matter. And it's, from his perspective, it's just very confusing. He's just like, what the hell is going on? Like now she's an egg, and now they've just left out the window, and I guess we'll open the egg, and I guess maybe she's our mom, and like none of that's correct.
Yeah, and they're like, a third shadow is nigh, but they don't say anything about it. And it's kind of a clue. If you connect things with the tape, there's stuff that's missing. But since in the PC CD-ROM version they didn't bother including the tape, I guess they didn't care.
Right. It certainly feels that way.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just doing a quick glance at my notes here too, because I feel like a lot of my comparison notes were kind of centric to the beginning of it. But yeah, here's yeah.
Well, he does the exploration. You don't know what's going on. You don't know what's going on. Like, you're just really sort of figuring things out from scratch. You can see there's some things you can't do yet. You can look at the darkness, but you don't know what to do about it. And you kind of just have to start connecting the dots. Like, at least for me, because I went in entirely blind. So I'm just like trying to figure out the whole concept of the game. And it wasn't until I was probably on the boat and like going on to the next phase that I really truly had a handle on what was happening and going on.
Right. Okay. And so how were you made clear on what to do from that egg scene, let's say, from Hetcho? I guess because she says you have to get out of town, more or less.
Yeah, it showed me a thing. And so I wrote down the thing, and then I tried to do the thing that they showed me, and it did a thing, but I did not know about the backwards. And I ended up getting stuck on some puzzle somewhere, and I ended up having to look it up to understand, because there was nothing that explained to me, and my brain didn't process that you could do a spell forwards or backwards for like a while until I had to.
See, I had somewhat of an opposite experience, because one of my notes is that I felt that they were oh no, this might sound insulting to you now, I'm sorry, but my note said that it sounded almost ham-fisted the way they. Okay, when you go into the tent with the green blankets, and he's like, I hate the color green, and it just it seemed like it was a really strong game. And
I felt like he was saying, I thought that he was saying, oh my God, that he was saying that because he had to make everything green and he had no choice.
Right, that's completely fair. Yeah.
So that's how I took it. I made sure to make everything green, and I was like, poor schmuck, and then I left. I didn't for a minute think anything of it.
That's fair. Okay. Yeah, that's fair though. I get it. Yeah, it could have gone either way. Flip of a coin for me in that too.
Because I've never heard the tape. I didn't understand any lore, and I was coming into the game blind. So all that information and content you said would be missing from a playthrough like that was me. It's not like I have a box or a strategy guide. So I thought he was like an employee or something, and he was one of the weavers, and I didn't even understand the dynamic until I started researching for this episode.
Right. See, and it goes to show the game did. I think the game officially messed up a little bit by not using just the phrase "the loom is the fabric of reality," because I know I thought the same thing on my first playthrough, where it's like you feel like you're more like, oh, I guess our people make clothes, like that's what we do. We're clothes makers, and then we dye these fabrics green, and like, yeah, you could form this whole little incorrect side story in your head just based off of like keywords like weavers and looms and stuff like that, and it's like. And then the magic does feel out of place, where it's just like, well, how are we casting spells? And then you're just like, I don't know, it's just vague 80s wizardry, I guess. It was big in the day.
Well, there was a lot of that in the game. Like at the end, when you use the spell because they left you your staff when you're locked up in the cage. And then they're like, oh, man, look at that. I'm going to steal his staff now after you're out. And then they don't put you back in, even though you don't have your staff anymore. It's like, there's all these like super random, like, oh, nobody's going to notice. Okay, the one thing though, maybe it was in both the versions I checked out though, is the music cut off quite suddenly when you're shifting to like a different scene or something was happening. And I felt like it did it in a way that it took me out a little bit because it was such a switch sometimes when a thing would happen, it would just be like, boom, it's different music now.
Right. Well, one of the biggest overall critiques, I think, like the people are pretty diehard one way or the other about this game, that it should be the EGA version. Even Brian Moriarty himself said that the definitive version of the game is the EGA version, and you get just like a vehement stance that this is the version. So I think, just in my own naturally reverence, I was determined to come into this episode steel manning the remake, because it is beautiful, and it's more beautiful than it gets credit for. But that's actually counter to my point, because at the end of the day, I came out of this agreeing with the consensus. I'm like, yeah, the remake is kind of a fuck up in a lot of senses, and one of the senses is what you just said with the music cutting off. And it's not so much that the music cuts off; that's more a sign of the fact that there wasn't enough CD space, and there's just I don't know. There was kind of like a heavy hand when it came to the way they did the remake. Just like cut the music off because it just like I'm not sure if they were in a hurry or what the deal was, but there is.
I think they were, because there was stuff in the source code on the CD-ROM, like behind the scenes and conversations and portraits, that had scenery and backgrounds and bushes and things, and they just cut that right out and made it like super boring instead.
Right. Okay. And then to the music thing is that music isn't played during moments of interactivity, like free roaming, like when you're just walking around the game, just exploring. Let's say the music's not played in the remake, and so basically you have this stance where the game about music has less music in the remake than the original, and like right then and there, that's kind of criminal. It's like, this is a game about music, and the remake was so mishandled that you walk away from the remake hearing almost no music at all. Like the whole time you're exploring, it's just quiet. There's sound effects, but it's otherwise quiet. There's no music. And just this morning, like a last dash Hail Mary, I put on the original again to refresh myself, and I was like, this is so immediately nicer, just immediately more immersive, hearing this like beautiful albeit 8-bit Swan Lake situation playing in the background, and just like it's just immediately more whimsical and fitting of the world than the silence that you get in the remake.
It's true. And there's the weird changes, right? Like what is his name? Chaos is a chick in the PC version, in the CD version,
In the CD.
a woman, a female, but like a male in the other versions, which is just, it's such a random change. I saw a Bob's Burger, like the pilot episode that went to Fox, and Tina's actually a guy, but with the same voice.
Oh, weird.
It was really weird to see. So they changed it, and they kept like most of the other stuff in the episode. But I was like, dude, good call.
Yeah, see that? I wonder. Since Brian Moriarty feels that EGA is the standard, I'm guessing he didn't write Chaos as a woman, because I don't know. As Chaos as a woman makes archetypical sense, right? The divine feminine would be that of water of chaos. So that actually, and if it got inspiration from Sleeping Beauty, then the Maleficent factor, which Chaos looks like, would also make sense that it's a female,
especially on the close-ups, right? Like, oh my gosh.
Right. Yeah. Totally. Exactly. So almost, that one almost makes more sense. But I guess irrelevant regardless to the characters, goals and whatever. Which, by the way, the because it isn't made clear for a long way into the game, the overall situation here is that Chaos is trying to raise an army of the dead, and I guess we'll go with they. They are using Bishop Mandible, who's more of like the active villain in the game, let's say, because the Chaos is kind of overarching and doesn't step forward until the end. But yeah, Bishop is kind of the pawn, and you get little hints that they're trying to raise an army by how many sheep or how much mutton they're ordering from Fleece.
He reminds me of something. Like Bishop Mandible reminds me of like a character from some movie. Maybe it was like Toy Store or something like super weird, but
interesting. Yeah, he's got like just one of those like tropey sort of situations going on.
I have a video to send you later. I've sped up the music in the game, and it sounded just like an arcade game. I think like Bubble Bobble or something, like dead on too.
Weird. Okay.
Yeah. It's just if Paul thinks I'm not insane and he can find something, I'll post a clip of it somewhere on one of our socials. But we'll see. He'll be like, "No, dude, no."
Then we'll never hear from it again.
But so Bishop Mandible has a servant too, right? His name is Cobb, and he's loyal but not very bright, which makes sense for like a helper dude.
Yes, Cobb's like the dungeon keeper, and Cobb is probably in a weird way the most famous character in the game, because Cobb is the character in Monkey Island.
What can you tell me about Loom?
Exactly. He's the one wearing the badge in Monkey Island. So that's
Or what can I tell you? But still, the joke's there.
Yeah. The pieces are all there. You guys can assemble it at home. Like
we're not here for accuracy. We're here because we want us to be. You said so.
It's the IKEA of podcasts. You got to put it all together yourself.
Sometimes it'll take a few episodes.
But yeah, so Cobb's there. And one little note I have, I'm not sure I could really squeeze in anywhere else. It's just to say that Loom suffered the unfortunate scenario of having to come out alongside of Monkey Island. And arguably King's Quest V as well. So Loom wasn't the commercial success that many other LucasArts games were, and that LucasArts themselves were hoping it would be. And I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that it, well, it's two parts. Since we're there, I'll just dig my heels in. Okay, it's two part. One is that it came out with Monkey Island and King's Quest V, which, any King's Quest game is tough to, back in the day, would have been tough to come out next to, because it was King's Quest. And then Monkey Island is arguably kind of the GOAT, let's say, of adventure. Yeah. So, that needs no further explanation as far why it would suffer next to that. But the other reason too is this game, the critics overall liked it, but they kept equating it to a great game for children. Due to its
not though. Oh, and see, it's not a simple game, man, unless I'm just so not bright. But boy, it's been a fun challenge to play this over the years.
Yeah, my little note, which I'm here we go. My little note is the fact that critics called this game one for younger audiences and children. Only highlights that people today and possibly adventure gamers have just gotten really soft. Because this is not an easy game, but for like, imagine how like hard and grizzled adventure gamers must have been in 1990 to be like to write it off as for children easy. Like, it is, even at its easiest, it's not that easy. Furthermore, I mean, it's quite dark, and there's some pretty gory scenes in the EGA version, which, since we're doing the comparison thing, VGA cut all the blood out, and basically censored quite a bit of it. FM Towns version brings back most of what was censored, but they don't bring back the blood, and that's a damn shame, because the Bishop Mandible's death was animated by Steve Purcell, and it is amazing the way that Chaos kills the bishop, the small animation that Steve Purcell gave it, and I don't want to overhype it if you guys haven't seen it, and then go to like Google it or whatever, because it is like 2.5 seconds, but it's just brilliantly drawn, as only it almost, you could tell it's Steve Purcell in a sense if you have an eye for that stuff. Played a lot of the Lucas games. It's just it's so well done. It's such a shame that it's not in even a remake or an upgraded version of that animation
somewhere in there.
Yeah, it's just not. But anyway, yes, it was critically hailed as too simple, a little bit too short as well. And to that, since this note happens to tie on to that, and there's not a ton of game here to really go through, so we're not even in wanting to, or in a hurry to get back to the actual timeline, because we're a third of the way through it. Shit, I spoke too much to draw that circle back to itself again. Okay, I remember. And actually, before I go into some, I'm going to pedal back just real quick and give you guys my little notes on Brian Moriarty, because this will help with context. So, quick little fun facts first. So Brian Moriarty saw an ad for a circuit board being referred to as a Loom. And he said that in that moment, the idea for Loom came to him complete and whole. Which I just thought, I take that for what you will. I just thought it was basically just interesting as far as where the birth of ideas come from and things like that. It could be something as simple as that, just an up close picture of, circuitry or motherboard, whatever. So that was kind of neat. The story was drafted in '88, 3 weeks after Moriarty joined LucasArts. And Brian Moriarty joined LucasArts because, well, he got out of Infocom before they closed, right? Infocom was headed kind of down the drain because Activision bought them out and demanded more out of them than they could produce. And yeah, Activision kind of ruined Infocom. That's a whole nother situation for another day. But Brian got out in time, and he basically found himself at the 1988 West Coast Computer Fair, and that's where he met Noah Faustine.
But before that, he made 3 games with Infocom, which were Trinity, Wishbringer, and Beyond Zork.
Exactly. So he was drafted by Noah Faustine by, actually, we'll get to that Noah note later. And so, as Anna said, so Brian did Wishbringer, Trinity, and Beyond Zork, which brings us full circle to the note, or the point I'd like to try and finish, if I could possibly remember it as I stutter. Yes, which is Wishbringer was developed from Infocom to be like an introduction to interactive fiction. And again, Wishbringer being Brian Moriarty's little one of his projects. And so basically Loom had a similar objective, which was to be a more of an introduction to graphic novels. So I think, I don't know, I feel like with that context, people back in the day maybe should have been a little kinder to it as far as it being easy, or even nowadays it is kind of known as being a quote, easy game. But that's extremely subjective and arguable. But regardless,
take a different level. Like, dude, you're trained by ear. You have to be able to hear what they're doing and then replicate it. Kind of like Simon, right? With no other indications. Like, tell me that's easy.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. We never really mentioned that. There is the standard and the expert mode, and the difference is that in expert mode you have to do it by ear. There's no visible staff. There's no colors of the notes. And I will say, I guess in standard mode, the very last draft that you have to cast is that way. You don't see you don't see this. You have to do it by ear, to put it more simple. Sorry. Whereas so in expert mode, the entire game is like the last draft that you cast in standard mode, which is you can't see it, which I think makes it kind of cool. I don't know, coming from a musician's perspective or whatever, like it'd be kind of fun to see if I could do it again a second time without being able to see it. Like, how much of it could you do by ear? But wildly challenging. Like, let alone for somebody who isn't a music. Like, that's kind of insane that was even offered. But
it's cool. Well, you can also, you like keyboard shortcuts. You can also use the number keys, at least on the Steam version, and it corresponds with the notes.
Oh, that's very cool. I didn't know that. Kind of wish I did.
Shift C is like the highest, but or the regular, even the keys on the keyboard, right? C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C.
Right. Yeah. Very cool. I didn't know that. All right, so let's get everybody through the story here, because there's not a ton to go through. There really isn't.
It's really not, actually. It feels like it's just beginning and then it's over.
It does, yeah. Maybe the pacing is a little maybe off, because it feels very like a lot's going on in Act 3 and Act 1. It feels like it takes kind of a while to unlock a lot of these notes and to get off the island. But that's where we're at as far as our little walkthrough with you guys is concerned.
We're off the island, right? Have we made a journey to the mainland, right?
Yeah, we're right in the middle there. So long story short, you hatch your mother figure, but not your mom. You hatch Hedgehole. you walk around. You learn some spells. Because you got your distaff in that scene, right, where you optionally hatch her or let it happen on itself. You walk around. Basically you're just unlocking notes and gathering a few more drafts. And then it's time to head to the mainland. You go up to the intro scene. You cast a spell into the sky to open, and just a big old sky vagina. There's a lot of sky vaginas in this game that open up and
sky ginas.
Things happen to them. Yeah, stuff goes in them, stuff comes out of them. It's a wondrous situation. But in this case, lightning comes out of it. It's an angry sky vagina, and it strikes the tree down, which becomes your boat. You hop on that boat, and you head off to the mainland, which brings us to Act 2, which is where I tell everybody where Anna is, because from Castleguard to Crystalguard, we're coming at you with our podcast, because now we're in Crystalguard. We're in the Emerald, all the green buildings.
You can hear everybody talking in the background. They're really that's the citizens. of
Yeah,
Crystalgard.
exactly. Because are you not in Castleguard? Are you in Castleguard?
I'm just outside of Castlegar in a place called Robson, and I'm at a family member's house of my husband's family. So we're all family here, but they're also here. And it sounds like a pub, right? We thought nice ambiance.
Yeah,
Everybody can listen to while they listen to the podcast.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. A nice European outdoor cafe if we wanted to really, yeah. Okay,
James spent a lot of time in Baden-Baden. So how about a German one?
right. Baden-Baden?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Baden-Baden
Right.
in Germany. It's a base because his dad's military.
Gotcha. I've only been to Stuttgart and not Berlin, Munich. He says loudly for the edit in point. Look, that's going to be a sloppy edit, and I know it, so I'm just calling it out. Like, look, there's a lot of cities to remember. All right, it was a chaotic trip through Europe. I barely remembered. Look, it doesn't matter. Back to the game. We're in the Emerald City place. This place looks a lot better in the EGA version. I don't like the Emerald City. I don't like Crystal Guard. It was very.
So you're not a fan of the Wizard of Oz at all?
No, that either.
No.
Yeah, none of it. None of the above.
So what is it? It's like it's very futuristic-y looking. It's very green. You're not a fan of those. I mean, it's not. It doesn't entice you. Is that kind of when you're there? Do you not feel the urge to explore, or does it feel kind of like not intuitive?
Yeah, all of that. Yeah, I guess so. It's yeah. Ultimately, I didn't feel the need to desire to explore it. I don't know what it is about it. I didn't like it in either version. It's frustrating to navigate in the VGA version specifically, looking for the bells. But regardless, you're there. This is where there is some scenes that the remake has that the EGA version doesn't have. And one of them happens here. Where basically, there's just two quick little close-ups of the Bishop Mandible talking, and you only get those in the remake. And I only really mention that because it's mostly the case where the remake doesn't have things the EGA did, and this is really the only scenarios where it's the other way around. So,
That's right. That's right.
There's no close-up portraits too in the remake, which is really weird.
It's really weird. Instead, I mean, you do get like the dragon causing havoc, though.
Right. Yeah, you get the one. But I mean, in the EGA, there's like these beautiful hand-drawn, even animated, giant, like room-sized portraits of the characters talking. And I feel like things like that would have helped my son be more immersed. Back to my regret.
As you're doing the voices, right?
Yeah, yeah. And you can like really see the characters' faces. And like, I don't know. Yeah, they try to get emotion through in the VGA by like having them wave their arms around kind of Muppet-like. And it just doesn't work. But anyway, so you're in the crystal place. This is where you start to get a kind of an idea of what's going on with the bishop, or you get vague gossip, let's say, between the people making the sixth and things like that. How do you say that word? Scythe? Sixth?
Scythe.
Yeah.
Scythe.
Something.
I'm gonna keep stop it. I'm in a loop. Help me.
they're making a sharp thing, and you hear tell, and you start to be like, hold on, this bishop guy, I'm starting to think he's not so godly after all. And then you move on into the forest where you get just straight bullied. Okay, I'll just chime in here at this point to say that I think that I thought the voice acting was really, really well done, except for I didn't really like Bobbin's voice acting because he comes across, I don't know, like in the EGA version, my impression of Bobbin was that he was like boyish and awkward. And in the EGA version, in a charming way, in a way that a 17-year-old should come across, especially when he's in over his head and is trying to make sense of exactly what's going on. Like there's just this boyish kind of awkwardness, like kind of feels unworthy of the people he's conversing with, and insuperior to those he's talking to. Let's say as a
right.
Yeah, as a 17-year-old
low
boy
in the hierarchy and
exactly.
low in self-confidence.
Thank you, exactly that. Whereas in the is that Thunder? Yeah, it is. Whereas in the remake, his voice acting makes him come across as kind of like naive and stupid. And you can see it's like a fine line between boyish and awkward to naive and stupid. Like it's a very thin line there, but it just tipped me over a little bit into the into that, which is, I don't know, it's kind of what happened to Roger too. Roger Wilco. It just tips him over into like a little too stupid. But anyway, enough about bloody voice acting, because it's here nor there. I would prefer the portraits without voices.
I'm not. I'm a turn off the voice acting, and every once in a while I'll check and listen to see if I can recognize everybody, and then turn it off again. Player. So
something about the voice acting also gives it it kind of gatekeeps it a little bit. It just gives it this very like, I don't know. There's
haughty.
and there's so much with the guild and the lore, and it's like you'll never understand. It kind of just has that vibe to it. Like, I don't know. I can't articulate it better than that, so I'll leave it there. But anyway, all right. We've learned some more drafts. All right, we've come up to the Scottish bullies. This is the point in the game that I really struggled. I didn't know that you could get to the sphere that shows you a vision of you scaring the bullies off by looking like a dragon. But anyway, regardless, you eventually are able to scare those guys off, and then you head into what's her name? Bloody the girl shepherd, Fleece. You head over to Fleece's house, and I like this part of the game because it made me feel smart. I thought this was a really good puzzle where you have to make the sheep green to basically spare them, and the dragon takes you instead. What did you make of that puzzle, since you were going in blind this week?
Oh, I think that's probably a lookup.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
Okay. See, I thought it was a good balance of in-game hints. Like, I felt like they said. I felt like they said that the white sheep stand out so much. Like, I felt like they really.
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant the one about the shepherds right away. That's what we were going back to.
Oh, no, sorry.
No, the sheep one was, that was intuitive, because you just now did we mention that on the episode? Yeah, so we both looked at it differently about the green. So I was already used to dyeing everything green anyway. And then that was the real moment where it's the figuring out of the backwards, the forward, you can dye and you can undye, right? I think that was my figuring out moment there, but I had to look it up. That's where I think it was.
Fair enough. Okay. Yeah. And I had made a note of that just being maybe perhaps on the easier side, maybe not, but in a good sense of like in that pocket of a good little puzzle moment where it's like the characters tell you what to do without telling you what to do. Like, you're not like lost in the desert, like just trying shit on the screen using, not that there's inventory, but it's like, there's that line between just like throwing your inventory at the screen versus like, really taking what you've just been told, thinking about it, and putting that into action. And so anyway, that was my like puzzle highlight of the game, because I felt like they set the player up to be a winner there, where it's like they kind of tell you what to do, but they really they really disguised the fact that they told you in a way that makes you feel like you got there on your own. There we go.
That feels good, though. Like a dopamine moment. Like that's a good old fashioned playing an adventure game, and this is why kind of a moment.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. One of those nice aha moments. So that was cool. I like that part. So then, the dragon takes you off to her lair.
Didn't Fleece kind of call you though, right? Fleece is the shepherd, right? Because she's the healing art, but she's like essentially brought him as an oracle, and kind of like thinks at least that she's heavily involved in that side of things.
Oh, that's interesting. Because I didn't get that from last night's play. I'm wondering if that's yet more things that were cut from the remake. Because I didn't hear that last night. And I don't remember my EGA playthrough. That was 5 years ago. Why would I remember that? But
it's funny that the little things that are missing, and you know what? I think some of it was kind of the direction that the industry was going, because it was beauty over body. I think over substance, over we're going to make this look so damn pretty, but it's going to take up more room, and nobody cares that we're going to lose things like dialogue. Or we're going to lose things like things that are actually influencing the storyline, because the picture is so pretty, it can tell that. And that's where the games are going anyways. And we want new people to buy it. And we want them to have a reason. It's funny the way that we were going in that direction. And then the games, we thought we were making them prettier and prettier by making them more and more 3D, right? But like, no, dude.
Yeah. That was a rough 10 years of puberty, let's say, during the evolution of polygons. But But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It was almost like an overcorrection into the simplification. And I guess, again, not knowing where I could get this in later in the episode, and we don't have too much left to go here, really. But I'll just say that I think one thing that's a shame is that the VGA remake is absolutely gorgeous. It is a beautiful looking game. Like there are some scenes in this that is just LucasArts at its finest, especially when you get to the Forge. Which, real quick, we'll just say you go into the Dragons thing. The game gets as close to Sierra E as it's going to get when you, as far as figuring out how to get out of the dragon situation. And then you do, and you end up in the Forge. Okay, cool, we're there. So this part of the game is gorgeous in the VGA remake. Just the shading that they do with the limited, not limited color palette, because that would be confusing, because they're not talking about the EGA version, but they purposely restricted themselves to quite a limited palette around the Forge of just oranges and such. And it's just, man, it's just such a good looking game, the remake, that's why I had this desire to come in here swinging and defending it. I mean, God, I'm looking at scenes now, like the Shepherd's Field outside. It's gorgeous in the EGA too, but like there's like these burgundy trees showing that it's like perhaps fall time in the VGA remake, and it's just gorgeous. Like there's some beautiful, especially I think the outdoor scenes really shine in the remake, and it's just so happens to be up against like one of the all-time shining examples of EGA art. Combined with having other issues with the game that's not the art's fault, that I don't think the VGA remake art gets the credit it deserves, because it's gorgeous.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful. The music's beautiful, and isn't it nice to be able to take a piece of music that, well, they didn't write. I mean, it's but to make it work with the game and to be legally allowed to do that in public domain and all that, it worked out well.
Yeah, here, yeah, it did. I will say too, since we're speaking on the art, the EGA version. Well, two things. One, I happened upon this quote doing homework for this episode, where Mark Ferrari, famed artist for LucasArts, who did the dithering, and I believe Loom was like, Ferrari has like the go-to story that he likes to tell people, which is they didn't think they could fit dithering on the discs. They didn't think they'd be able to basically handle it as far as programming was concerned, to allow space for it in the RAM or whatever. And so Mark went home and mocked up this beautiful scene, and left it out on his computer when everybody went to lunch. And it was so beautiful that when Gilbert and Purcell, or when the crew came back, they saw it and recognized it as too beautiful to go on without. So they had to really just buckle down and figure out a way to get this type of artwork into their games. And so that's, one of Mark's, go-to stories for good reason. And so anyway, he's there's a great podcast. I'm trying to think who actually did that interview. I can't think of it now. I guess we'll just leave it. But I heard a wonderful podcast with him a long time ago, and he had made this quote where, he said that the EGA palette, he hated the EGA palette, first of all, and Mark was an illustrator, I think he was a primarily like pencil artist, before working with LucasArts, and the EGA palette, I believe, I could be wrong about this, but I think that the colors were picked by programmers based on logic, not by artists based on aesthetic.
And not based on restrictions either, then.
Well, the colors themselves that are in the EGA palette. Like you might look at that, it's like a weird red. It's like almost kind of coral in a sense. You might look at that and be like, why that red? And it's like the choices weren't made by artists trying to pick, okay, guys, if we can only have 16 colors, what are the best 16 we can have? It was not done like that at all. It was more done in a, let's have every primary covered, and then what makes the most logical sense from a programming perspective. I don't know what that means. That could mean like hex colors. I'm not sure, but it's a logical choice, not a visual choice, as to why we got those 16 colors. And so Mark Ferrari always hated them. And what he said just made me laugh, and I wrote it down, which was that the EGA palette looks like a circus clown viewing at colors through pupil dilators. Beautifully harsh.
That's adorable.
Yeah, pretty good, man. But anyway, I just wanted to note that this game, I have a bit of nostalgia for this game and a bit of nostalgia for The Last Crusade. And it must have been the EGA version of The Last Crusade that I played as
Mm-hmm.
a kid, because when you look at speaking just the EGA versions here, when you look at like the temple scenes or any scenes like in like cave-like scenarios, dark lighting, low-lit scenarios in a cave, you can draw like a quick parallel between Last Crusade and Loom. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just the way that Ferrari did the contrast, like these crazy bright contrasts that you
Mm-hmm.
think would work that do. Just like having magenta as a highlight, as a shadow highlight on a cave wall. It's like, well, I thought
Mm-hmm.
this was dark lighting, but there's something about this like vivid contrast that Ferrari did.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it makes me feel good. I just love looking at it, and I love Last Crusade. I think Last Crusade EGA is another like not underrated. The EGA version's better than the VGA.
Mm-hmm.
I think in that one as well for similar reasons. So that brings us to the end of the game somehow, and
Well, there's this. Okay, so you deal with like the whole cave, and you go through and you do a bunch of stuff, and you do a bunch of spells, and long story short, you meet a boy, and in my notes, when I go back to my notes about this part, I'm like, well, this kid's just a lazy schmuck, right? Because
yeah,
that was my impression. He's just like, whatever, who's that? So he's lazy, and we just took his clothes. And due to doing that, that was another one of those Bobbin causing trouble moments.
right. Whoops. Yeah.
Whoops, he's dead now. A dragon like ate him. And one of the other differences is there's an extra scene in the original where you can see the dragon reaching out with his claw to go eat him. But you don't see
Yes.
that one little bit's just missing.
Yeah. And God, little things like that mean so much. 'Cause, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You see the dragon almost like tapping him on the shoulder in a sense. Or just, yeah, it's just in a good way. Ugh.
Yeah. And it's kind of fun though, because not only do you just kill him, but luckily he does end up coming back as a ghost, which is kind of fun because that means they also got to draw the art to make him as a ghost, and I always appreciate that in a game.
Right? Yeah. Gotta love a good ghost in a game. Eh? Yeah, so he comes back as a ghost. He's not thrilled about his circumstances in which he died, which is kind of fair enough. But then you bring him back to life, and he's the only character that comes back to life, and I like that because the game actually has quite a good feeling of stakes, in the sense that like characters do die in this game. Besides not you, Rusty, he does. I mean, he dies, but he comes back. But the other
Well,
characters,
they brought the shepherd dudes back to life. If they,
did they?
mm-hmm.
Fair enough.
They
Okay,
went back and went through a whole bunch of scenes, and everybody that had essentially died, except for the one who had kind of sacrificed himself up there. But everybody else, it was just like, yeah, they brought them all back.
Oh, so it's just the glass guy, the emerald guy who doesn't.
Yeah, just that guy, but he wanted to. It was a different situation with him,
right? Because his people prided themselves on being brave in the face of death, right? So
it would have been a dishonor, kind of like a
Yes.
Klingon to not be dead.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Are we around? Did I miss the part with the mountain maze? Because there's like a little somewhat annoying mountain maze, and
Well, that was after the dragon. It was kind of the whole. It's all in there.
Right.
Yeah.
I quickly forced us to the forge, but there's a little scene in the mountain maze that's very Space Quest Gold Rushy, where the light only it's like very limited lighting that follows where you're walking, and just one of the few times in a Lucas game you see Sierra influence. That's not common. But
because then later you have to close up all these little places and stuff, and in essentially the same way it becomes like doors into worlds, and it all morphs.
Yeah. Exactly. All right, so we're more or less there. Look, listen, this has been a lot longer than we even thought it would be.
Yeah, it gets a bit crazy. Long story short, Mother Hetchel gets made into a turkey, and there was a demon. Like, this kind of stuff just happens, and it's funny. Like, the game is a more serious game, but they have all these like little lines. Like, I don't know, you leave that feather alone, and I don't know. There's these little lines that pop up that are just kind of unexpectedly funny. And I think we've mentioned that with The Dig as well. It was kind of like that. Like, it's a dry kind of a game, but there's these little moments.
Yes. And it's funny you say that too, because I halfway through playing last night, I stopped to Google where Brian Moriarty was born, and I was shocked to find that he wasn't British, because it just for more than just the dryness and the humor. There's just quite an English vibe about the writing in this game, and the way the lore was approached and things like that. But anyway, yeah, it's
But yeah, when you get to the ending and rifts of time happen, I was confused because I'm like, until the side of the pattern is mended, we cannot return to the other. And then you just leave the bad guy where the loom is, and you go off into the rift of space as a bird, obviously, and you're carrying stuff like a curtain. And I guess now it makes more sense now that you've explained some more lore to me, Paul, than it did before.
Right. I looked at it as they're carrying off the last remnants, the last piece of fabric of their reality.
Their reality. That makes sense. So from that perspective. Okay.
And that could be wrong, but I that's what I picked up from. It's like that was the last piece of the last piece of fabric of their reality, and that they had to preserve that and protect it. And
it's kind of like Never Ending Story a little.
Perhaps so. God, it's been forever since I've seen that. I should watch that with Strum.
Oh my God, break his heart for sure.
Right? Yeah, that's fair.
Jesus, how do you feel about horses, kid?
Yeah, never mind. That's a swift U-turn, doing the old Abe Simpson gif on you on that one.
Show him the second one. That one's not like that.
Nah, that's okay. I think we're just gonna.
The story is over.
We're not gonna watch the timeless original, but here's the forgettable sequel that nobody.
When the forgettable sequel came out, my parents, they didn't have like fancy channels, but we had a cable box. And if I put it on Family Channel, I was allowed to see the screen, but in inverted colors, like they used to stop you from watching them. And I recorded Never Ending Story Part 2 because I was obsessed with the original. And I watched it that way, and I've never seen it out of that way.
Wow, that's dedication. Jeez Louise.
It's really annoying.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, we're okay. Before they carry the fabric off, I will say that I think the perhaps the single most beautiful scene in a game. Like at least I would submit it for consideration to be to be picked as like the standout. It would be I don't really know how to word it, but just the star-filled lake where you meet your actual mom Cigna. It's like the star-filled lake in the galaxy, and your mom Cigna, who's a swan, is there, and it is beautiful in the VGA version as well, but it's outstanding in the EGA version because there's not even 16 colors. Like they're just working with basically blacks and whites and a little bit of gray or blue or purple here and there, and it's just insane. The mood that comes out of that scene is just God, yeah. I could just stare at that for like an hour. Well,
yeah, like I could put that up on a poster on my wall, right? Come on,
yeah,
that would be
so good. It's just so beautiful.
Like when I'm going to the bathroom, I kind of want it on my bathroom wall.
But I would need it to be like GIF, like animating. I like just because the way it twinkles and drips and just man, it's so good.
What are those called? Those like the rulers and stuff we used to have when we were kids, and you turn it and it would show that the picture was moving. Like so, as you'd walk by it, a face would turn or what. I don't remember what that technology was, but you could do it like that. Yeah. Stereogram or something.
Something gram.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Gram. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's the one. But yeah, and then the game kind of ends, right? So that's it. You're dealing with but what happens? What happens to the bad guy? What happens to everybody else? And I guess that's where they leave you wanting for something else. Right.
And there was supposed to be something else. So yeah, the game has a kind of a sad ending, I guess you could say. I mean, it's yeah, I'm wondering if bittersweet is more appropriate, but I think it's more bitter than bittersweet.
It's like the Little Mermaid. At the end of the Little Mermaid, she turns to sea foam in the original version. She doesn't get to come back. She doesn't get to nothing. She just turns to sea foam. And the ending of this is in a way kind of like that, but like at least he gets to be like alive.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's I'm trying to think if it's. I'm wondering how dependent on future stories it was. Like Long time listeners would know that I covered this game. This podcast covered this game with Rick, who used to be a host on here many years ago, and well, I mean, not that long ago, but we covered this many years ago, probably like 2018 or 19. And Rick always had the standpoint of like that it was the perfect ending to any game, period, and that there shouldn't have been a sequel anyway. And I don't know, my stance on that was more along the lines of like I would have liked a sequel just to get more of it, more material, to have had more LucasArts games, I guess you could say, in the catalog. But what ended up happening was so this game was supposed to be a trilogy overall. And super like from a nerdy perspective, Noah Faustine was working on Forge, I believe. I think he had at least like design document. He was at least in possession of design documents. I'm not sure if he was the one who made them or not. I'm assuming he did. But basically, there was supposed to be two more. This whole thing, by the way, was canned in 1994 officially, and it was done so because I believe of the dig. The dig was just like burning through all the resources that they had, and including Brian Moriarty himself. And so yeah, basically you could probably blame the dig for not seeing the other two, and the other two were all that I could really find on them. Well, I think I tried harder last time, because I remember finding either a fan-made demo of Forge or a non-interactive demo that was Lucas's. I'm not sure. It doesn't matter. But Forge would have been the name of the second one, and it would have focused on Rusty Nailbender, who would have been fixing things, I guess you could say. And then part 3, which I just learned this today, I didn't know this, would have been called The Fold, and it would have been starring Fleece, the shepherd. Yeah. And I liked her, so I was more for some reason I was more bummed when I heard to not have gotten that one than Rusty's. Yeah, because I don't know, Rusty wasn't super likable. It's not even his fault. He was killed and pissed about it. Fair enough. And he was like a bratty kid at first, but he's a kid, so it's like he didn't really do anything wrong. I wasn't keen to play a game starring him, let's say, but I really liked Fleece. And so yeah, that brings us to the end.
I mean, I guess, what I kind of get is weavers are above anything material. Right? Like they're above, they're on a different level than somebody else would be in that way. And they know it. Bobbin knows it, I think, too.
Right. They almost seem placed in between, for lack of a better term, humans and the spirit of the universe itself. They seem to almost be like this crossroad in the middle, hence being able to manipulate the fabric of reality. And there is this element where they wear hoods and have no face, and if you stare into their face that you die. And yeah, there's this ethereal element to them. Yeah,
because he's like, do you want to look at you? Yeah, I'm going to look at your face. And in one of the scenes in the game, and he's like, yeah, you sure you want to do that? It's like, yeah, I'm going to look at your face. Well, he says it so simply too. He's like, I don't think it's a good idea. And then the dude does, the screen cuts out, and it's like, and the guy dies.
Yeah, poor Cobb. That's right.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's Boom, which is Space Quest 4. One of the cool things when you're looking through the bin at the Galaxy Galleria Mall, and you get the latest bomb from master storyteller Maury Brianardi, where it's like a post-Holocaust adventure set in the post-Holocaust America, where neutron bombs have eradicated all life, leaving only you to wander through the wreckage. No other characters, no conflict, no puzzles, no chance of dying, and no interface make this the easiest to finish game yet. Just boot it up and watch it explode.
Wow. I didn't realize they really had their number.
Yeah, right. And the sequel that can be found chowing on the clam, and that he's in a bunch of their other games. He's in like Monkey Island, and he's in Day of the Tentacle and stuff. So there's all these like little in jokes from the LucasArts games that nod to one another within their own universe, much like Sierra does, but they're slightly less like obtrusive. In LucasArts, they're a little more on the chill side often than the Sierra ones, where the Sierra was a little more on the nose.
Usually, but I hate to bring up one, like the only example I could think of to shit on your point, but I will say that the Ask Me About Loom badge that Cobb's wearing in Monkey Island is pretty fucking on the nose. It's like straight up, ask me about this other game we just put out. Like, damn, that's so they could be on the nose too. But man, that thing about Boom was super prophetic because it's like I feel like adventure games. Our listeners heard me rant about that plenty, but adventure games are heading in this direction of like, just don't do anything at all. Just fucking, just click 3 or 4 times, and it'll be a nice short experience. Look, let's just get in and out of here.
Look, why don't you just go watch some TV, honey? Go sit down on the couch, grab yourself a bowl of popcorn. There's no need for any of this trouble.
Exactly. All right. Well, before Anna wraps it up, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you to Brian Manow, who wrote us a lovely email. And I have to correct from last episode. I am forced to make some corrections, which is that it wasn't Ralph Wiggum that was voiced by whatever her name was. That was 2 weeks ago. I don't know. It was Martin. It was the other effeminate Simpsons child. You can say effeminate, right? Yeah. Okay, we're good. We're good. I don't care if we're not good. We're making it good. So anyway, it was Martin. That's my bad. And also, thank you to Brian for playtesting Phantom Fellows. Thank you to Jess Lai, who I know is listening and did an awesome job of relentlessly testing it over and over again. And yeah, thank you to everybody doing that. We're almost done, people. For people who are interested in it, I've finished the soundtrack for the songs for the first 3 days, as well as the theme. We just got to do the next few days worth of music while beta testing heads towards wrapping up. And yeah, I'm not done.
All right. Well, on this side here, over at the pub, I'm going to say a big shout out to our newest Patreoner, and that would be Gareth. Thank you, Gareth, for joining the extra special thanks tier.
Thank you, Gareth.
Really super appreciated. Also a shout out to Brian Manown, Girolamo Castellado, because you want to hear me say your voice or say your name in my voice. Then Mark Fillion and Michael Council and Tim Ellis. And I don't know. I think we had another potential new one, but I don't know where they are. Oh, join date. The site's not working. But thank you to Jay Holmes and everybody else who's out there helping us make the podcast happen. And if you want to reach out and join our Patreon, we're out there. Just look us up, Patreon, Classic Gamers Guild, or better yet, not better yet. Better yet's Patreon. But outside of that, you can say hi to us on Twitter at CGG Podcast or at Phantom Fellows. You can send us your words, mail at classicgamersguild.com. You can find us on Facebook. We're a page. We're a group, Classic Gamers Guild. We're Instagram and YouTube under the exact same names. These episodes are all on YouTube, so you can go and check that out. It's just an audio. There is no video, so don't get too excited. But there is one episode with video. You can hunt for it. It's out there in the YouTube verse. So that's it. Thank you so much for listening to us talk about Loom.
That's it? We're good?
We're good.
Okay. So I'll do the thing. Also, Gareth, thank you very much. I wanted to say too, he has the Endless Enigma, I think, on his wall, and you don't see that painting very often. And I just think it's cool. So if he's listening, I like the painting above your head. The last time I saw you in a streaming situation, I think it was the Endless Enigma. It might have been the Serenity one. I forgot. Doesn't matter. Don't.
Thanks for being a fellow Quest for Glory fan.
And also, don't do murder.
Podcast. I'll wait. Hang on. Okay, 2 main versions. Story told through atmosphere.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, those are good stretching noises, though.
It's a fine line between a stretch noise and a blowjob noise.
Yeah, no shit. I can hear that.